Hey, it's Manu with 22 Sound, your record store in Mandeville, Louisiana, right outside of New Orleans. It is our job to stay up to date with the new vinyl releases, so we might as well share what we find with you. So every week we put out a little video with what we think are the most noteworthy vinyl releases of the week. We're looking at release date August 26, 2022 in this video. And we're starting with the big one, Kendrick Lamar. His newest album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, is finally getting its vinyl release. Well, it's 3 months roughly after the release on other platforms, so that's actually not too bad. Just in comparison to what we've been used to, especially in the hip-hop world, sometimes the wait time is really long. But here it is, and it's Kendrick Lamar, so I don't think I really have to introduce him to anybody. One of the biggest hip-hop superstars in the world right now, first rapper to ever win a Pulitzer Prize. And unlike other rappers who release like 10 mixtapes, 6 EPs, 3 albums every year, he works at a much slower schedule, but this is working out pretty well for him, because when he does release something, he certainly gets people's attention. So I'm sure the Kendrick fans out there have already heard the album, but are really looking forward to finally getting the vinyl version of it. And speaking of delayed releases, next up is Silk Sonic. Their album of last year, actually, An Evening with Silk Sonic, is finally also getting a vinyl release. Took about 9 months. This is, of course, the collaboration project of Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak, and it is kind of like their tribute to the sound of the 70s. A really fun album. It just really sounds like two guys who don't really have to prove anything to anybody, can just pressure-free have some fun together, and yeah, it's just a really great good times album that they came up with. And so I'm sure a lot of people have been looking forward to finally getting this on vinyl. Here it is. I'm not going to go into too much of why are we having all these delays. Somebody just please open some more pressing plans. Thank you. But not everything is delayed. Next up, we have an album that's actually being released on all platforms at the same time. It's Bandaid Brigade's new album, Sex is Terrifying. Yeah, if you're not familiar with Bandaid Brigade, they're somewhat of a punk super band. Among others, we have Zach Quinn of great New Orleans band Pears in it. But this is not punk at all. It's not what you would expect from the members of this band. It's actually more of a yacht rock project, if you want to call it that. They throw in a few different styles in there, but it's definitely a little bit of an homage to that sound of, I guess, mainly like the late 70s, early 80s. And they're definitely doing all this with a sense of humor. Videos are really funny. Their lyrics are really funny, but they don't fall into that irony trap. I think this is too good, or at least the last album, I'm Separate, was just too good to just be ironic. I think they really like this stuff, and they're really great at it. Come up with some really great hooks. So if you haven't checked them out yet, I certainly recommend them. At least I really like the last albums. I'm really curious if they can keep up that level. Bandaid Brigade. And next up we have Marcus King with his new album Youngblood. He is something like a prodigy, I guess you can say. This is, at 26 years old, already his 5th album overall, if you count the ones that he released with the Marcus King Band. Technically his 2nd solo album, but this is some really nice blues rock. He's a great guitar player, and if you ask me, I'm almost an even better singer too. He has a really great voice, really soulful, really heartfelt. Is a great songwriter, and the sound of it really has like that kind of southern dustiness to it. It's produced by Dan Auerbach, who generally always kind of strips the music down to its essence. And I think this guy really has a bright future ahead of him. Marcus King. Next up is a band with a pretty bright past, hopefully future as well. It's Muse with their new album Will of the People. It's their 9th studio album already. And yeah, apparently the record company wanted to put out a greatest hits compilation, and they said nope, we want to write new songs. We still got something to say, and they did. And Matt even said it's the best album they've ever done. Now, of course, we heard that from musicians a million times, but then I actually have to say, well, what else should they say? I mean, it would be kind of weird if he said this is kind of like a fifth best album, roughly. It's really not that great, but we're releasing it anyway. No, they're doing it with conviction, and I gotta say, I've always had a lot of respect for Muse. They kind of came up during a time where it was en vogue in rock to be more like stripped down. It was kind of the time of the garage rock revival, the Strokes, White Stripes, bands like that. But they were just really bombastic, theatrical. Their shows were really big, and were kind of more in the tradition of bands like Queen, who didn't really stick to a specific style. They kind of just threw in stuff from all kinds of different angles, and I always really respected that they did their own thing, and they got really big doing it. And apparently they still have some creativity in them, and I'm really curious to hear what they came up with. Will of the People is the name of their new album. And last but not least, we generally here like to focus mainly on new music, but we always like to throw in some reissues too. And well, at first I wanted to talk about Moby's Play. Moby has been and is reissuing a lot of his discography. Play, arguably his biggest album, but then I thought you might already have heard of that. So let's throw in a really nice underground gem. It's Vinterland and Welcome My Last Chapter. This is a melodic black metal band that released only one album, this one in 1996. Not really sure what happened to them afterwards. They did apparently do some reunion shows at some point, but never released any other music. But this album was absolutely fantastic. Stumbled upon this a few years ago, and at the time it wasn't even available on Spotify. But this is just everything that makes melodic black metal so great. It is ferocious, it's fast, it's evil, it's ice cold, but it also has those really great melodies in it, and they kind of vary the tempo enough that it really stays interesting. There are those really fast blast beat parts, but instead of just going through with that from beginning to the end, they keep it interesting by varying the tempo, and it's just amazing riffs, an amazing atmosphere that they create. This is an absolute gem if you like black metal, especially the melodic kind. You haven't heard of them yet, check these guys out. Really glad they're getting a reissue here, and I'm hoping I can pick up a copy for myself too. Great band. Vinterland, Welcome My Last Chapter. Alright, as always I like to point out, of course this is just very subjective. There's many more releases out there. Check out our website 22soundrecords.com. You can pre-order all these records. Of course you can order thousands of other records that are already out as well. Support an independent record store while doing it. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Follow us on our social media at 22soundrecords. You can discover lots more great new and old music on there as well. Thank you for watching. See you all next week.